We are a little less than a month away from the NBA playoffs officially starting. So with that being the case, I want to look back at this year and highlight 5 players who exceeded expectations and proved everyone wrong. And first up, we have Laurie Legend, the first-time All-Star, and most likely the Most Improved Player winner. Now for Laurie coming into his career, he was a highly touted lottery pick for Chicago, but after being traded to Cleveland, most likely it looked like he'd be a role player and an above-average NBA player. And after a very solid 2022 season, Laurie was traded once again to the Utah Jazz. And Utah undoubtedly, he would get more opportunity, had the ball in his hands, and be the first option on a bad team. But I don't think anyone expected Laurie to be as good as he's been this year, averaging 25.4 points, 8.5 boards, 1.8 assists on 51, 40, and 87 splits. One of the better high-volume shooting seasons in NBA history. As all-time, only 15 players ever have shot 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and averaged above 25 points. And by accomplishing this feat, Laurie is the youngest player to do this since Kevin Durant in 2013. And one thing I do want to make known, for ESPN's top 100 list, Lauri Markkanen was not even ranked. That right there puts into perspective how crazy this breakout season has been. And looking since the All-Star break, Laurie's play has gotten even better. And since that mark, he is averaging 30.3 points per game. And looking back at Laurie's case as the NBA's most improved player, comparing this year and last year, it's night and day. And once again shows what a player can do when given the keys to an offense and the free reign to do what he can. As in this comparison, Laurie in Utah, his scoring is up by 10 points. His field goal percentage up by 6%, 3 percentage up by 5, and he's had 2 40-point games compared to before this year where he had 0 career 40-point games. And the last thing I do want to highlight is Laurie's Utah Jazz team. As much like Laurie, they have overachieved massively. As coming into the year, they are projected to the second worst record in the NBA and not win 24 games. And going from a first-time All-Star next up, we have Klay Thompson, a multi-time All-Star and multi-time NBA champion. And for Klay, his injury history is documented at length, with the knee as well as the Achilles. And last year, he had a pretty decent season, and in the playoffs, he was hit or miss with his defense being pretty non-existent. I would say Klay that year was 75 or 80% of what he was pre-injury. But this year, very quietly, he's had a great individual season, averaging 22 points, his highest since 2017, 4 boards, 3 assists, on 43, 41, and 90 shooting splits. Compared to a prime Klay Thompson, at least offensively, this version of Klay isn't far off. And after a very slow start of this season, only averaging 17 points the first 2 months, Klay since then has been on a heater. And for the Warriors, I would personally argue he's been their second best player this season, with Andrew Wiggins only playing 37 games and Jordan Poole shooting an abysmal 32% from behind the arc. And when speaking about prime Klay Thompson, look at these numbers right here for Klay in the new year. Averaging 25.2 points, 4.4 boards, 2.5 assists on 46, 43, and 90 splits. Klay Thompson in 2023 has been a legit all-star level player, having 4 games of 40 plus points, including 54, and 4 games of 10 plus threes, and 1 game where he knocked down 12. I know Golden State's overall team isn't nearly as good as last year, but Klay Thompson surprisingly has had a great bounce-back season. As after last year, a lot of NBA fans said Klay was washed and his prime was effectively ended. But if you watched him very closely, offensively, he resembles prime Klay Thompson. Defensively speaking, he's still not there, probably never will be, but offensively, he can go for 40 any night. And when it comes to the NBA playoffs, nobody, and I mean nobody, wants a healthy Steph, Klay Thompson, and Wiggins to see in the first round. Now, looking past Klay Thompson, to another injured superstar, we have Kawhi Leonard, who missed all of 2022 after being hurt in the 21 playoffs. And for Kawhi Leonard, most times, his overall play and team goes under the radar, especially with the Clippers. But this year, his load management and sitting out games has been scrutinized to the nth degree, and at this point, he's the face of load management. And to some degree, I do get it, it is frustrating, but Kawhi Leonard is a playoff guy and doesn't care about the regular season. And when it comes to his injuries, they're not knick-knack injuries here and there, they're big-time major issues. He's not sitting out games due to a sore thumb or a bruised elbow. He's sitting games due to severe knee injuries and ACL injuries. And looking at this year, his start of the season was anything but ideal, only playing 16 of 37 games and averaging 17 points. At that point, the media was on Kawhi's case like I've rarely ever seen. But since then, in the preceding 23 games, he suddenly turned back into prime Kawhi Leonard overnight, averaging 28.2 points, 6.7 boards, 4.0 assists on ridiculous 53, 50, and 91 splits. It's almost like Kawhi flicked a switch, set its playoff time, and turned back into 2019 prime Kawhi Leonard. It's definitely a great sign for Clippers fans that Kawhi has now played 23 of his team's last 27 games. And when it comes to the NBA media, the heat Kawhi got was pretty unfair, as unlike most superstars, he is coming off a severe injury. And talking heads questioning his motor, his motivation, and his desire to win is completely uncalled for. As many forget, this guy, when healthy, is a walking 30 and a two-time NBA champion. And just like Golden State, when it comes to the NBA playoffs, nobody wants to see Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and a deep Clippers team in the first round. And staying in the Western Conference next up, we had Domantas Sabonis, the three-time All-Star who started his first All-Star game this season. And for his Kings team this year, they're the biggest shocker and overachiever in the NBA, as right now as it stands, they are second in the Western Conference. And for Sabonis, what's so satisfying is him being traded to Sacramento was looked at as a bad move and an awful trade for the Kings. And much of the media ignored him, a two-time All-Star, being involved in that swap. When it comes to current players, former players, and especially analysts, all of them were against this trade and Sabonis going to Sacramento. But this year, he's 100% proved he's the piece they needed to get over that playoff drought. As this year, he's averaging 19 points, 12.3 boards, most in the NBA, 7 assists on 62, 37, and 77 splits. He is quite literally the do-it-all big and the perfect offensive player, as he can operate in the post, the pick and roll, with the ball, without the ball, and he can push it on the fast break. He is a very, very rare one-of-one talent, and almost like Jokic on a diet and 2 inches shorter. And looking through all of NBA history, Sabonis this year had an historic season. As all time, there's only 2 players to average 19, 12, and 7 in a single year, that being Sabonis and Wilt Norman Chamberlain. And looking past Sabonis' individual play, Sacramento once again is second in the Western Conference, something nobody thought could happen, as coming to the year, they are projected to be the 8th worst team in the NBA and not win over 35 games. In terms of record, the Hornets, Wizards, Blazers, and Bulls projected to have more wins. And I want to be clear in saying this, Sacramento's overall team is deep and they have tons of pieces. But looking at their offensive dominance, I don't think it's a coincidence they've gotten so much better when they added Sabonis, as this year, they're first in scoring, third in assists, second in field percentage, and first in offensive rating. Compared to 2022, they're 16th in scoring, 20th in assists, 20th in field percentage, and 25th in offensive rating. You can't give all the credit to one player, but for the Kings, this turnaround does not happen without Domantas Sabonis. And looking at our last player, we have Julius Randle has been a huge part of the New York Knicks and their revival. So looking at Julius last year, he was hated and despised by Knicks fans. And it got so bad, he was being booed at games and borderline quitting on the court. It was an ugly scene, and we thought Julius wouldn't be a Knick past this season. But like magic, he's reinvented himself and came back stronger and even better than he was in 2021. Averaging 25.2 points, the highest for a Knicks player since Melo in 2014, 10.4 boards, 4.1 assists on 46-35 and 75 splits. Those stats right there are 100% highly impressive, but his impact on winning is even better. As the Knicks right now are going to crack 45 wins and be a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. When coming to the year, their bar was set at 38 wins max, behind the Bulls, Hawks, and Raptors. When it comes to New York Knicks, being the mecca of basketball, this turnaround is simply unprecedented, going from last year being 11th seed now to being a top 5 seed. And Julius Randle and his play, compared to this year and last year, is night and day. So that right there is the end of the video, and that is 5 players who have proved everyone wrong this season. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.